Hello and welcome to the Federal. Today we have a very eminent, important personality with us, Professor Ganesh Devy. He is a scholar, linguist, writer, historian and many more. He is in Chennai today at Roja Muttaya Library to discuss his new book, The Indians, Histories of a Civilization. He is one of the editors of the book. So my first question to you is, you have been in Gujarat for over 35 years. So why did you decide to move towards south? Why did you decide to get settled in Dharwad?
Well, I moved to Gujarat in order to be a city built by Erasure Gaikwad, who was a very liberal and modern thinking man.
Okay.
And he had created a cosmopolitan city, vibrant with culture, arts. He brought many visionaries to Baroda. I enjoyed being in that city and also working with tribals in villages near Baroda. But in 2015, a year and a half after, Dr. Dabolkar was killed in Pune. Comrade Pansare got killed in Kolhapur. And the very same year, in the month of August, Dr. Kalburgi got killed in Dharwad. So, when Dr. Kalburgi got killed, since he was a Sahitya Akademi awardee, many writers who had received Sahitya Akademi award decided to return their awards in protest against the silence of the Sahitya Akademi at that juncture. The Academy had not expressed condolence the way it should for the killing of a writer who had received Sahitya Akademi award. So, that entire episode is, it came to be called in media as award wapasi, but it was not award wapasi, it was not the returning of awards, it was actually insisting on certain values such as freedom of expression, tolerance, inclusive society. He was speaking about Basveshwar as a prophet of inclusion, as a prophet of emancipation, as a prophet of liberation. I felt very sad that this had happened, but just returning the award was not enough for me. I decided to bring several writers from Gujarat, where I was when I returned the award. I wanted to bring those writers to meet the widows of Dabolkar, Pansare and Kalburgi. So, we travelled south. I named that journey with so many writers, going south or Dakshinayana. So, writers from Gujarat were joined by writers from Bombay, Maharashtra, writers from Goa also joined. When we were in Karnataka, so many writers from Karnataka came together. Also writers from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana joined us. So, it became a multi-state, multilingual congregation of writers, all speaking in a single voice about the importance of tolerance and freedom of expression. At that point, I noticed that Dr. Dabolkar had his organization, Andhashraddha Nirmulan Samiti, that is anti-superstition committee of people, to defend his case, and Comrade Pansare had his party, because he was member of a political party, Communist Party, to take up his case. But in the case of Dr. Kalburgi, the family felt left alone. There was no organization defending his case, and therefore my wife Surekha and I felt that we should move to Dharwad, where Dr. Kalburgi used to live, help the family and manage this case till the point it reaches investigation and trial. That is how we decided to move to Dharwad.
Okay. So, now that you have brought it up, I will ask about the Sahitya Academy. You returned the Sahitya Academy, but the parliamentary panel very recently recommended that writers should give an undertaking that they will not return the awards. How do you see this?
I remember an event that took place long time back, and that was 105 years ago. In 1917 or 18, I might be making a mistake, it was either 17 or 18, but 105 years back, a Bengali writer was given knighthood for his contribution to literature. The name of that writer was Rabindranath Tagore. Later, after the Jallianwala Bagh, he decided to return the knighthood, and the British government did not punish him or scold him or frown upon him for returning the knighthood, and not did the British government, colonial government of that time bring up any law or regulation saying that if any honor is given, an undertaking has to be received from the person to be honored before it is given. So, if the colonial government did not have such a regulation, it does not look, as far as I understand, very good for a democratic nation.
Sir, you are in Chennai at Roja Muttaya Library to discuss about the new book, The Indians Histories of a Civilization. You are one of the editors of the book, and I read your introduction. I think it kind of tells the readers why the book is important, but can you also share with the viewers of the Federal, why do you think it's important?
The importance can be a multi-faced phenomenon. So, I will speak of two ways in which I consider this book to be of some significance. The first is, in 2017, the central government of India decided to appoint a committee. They constituted a committee to review the Indian past for the last 12,000 years. Why 12,000 years? Because that is when the Holocene began. A great climate change occurred, and that allowed life to flourish here, and so the human population multiplied, animal population multiplied, and after several thousand years a civilization could come up. That is why 12,000 years. So, the government constituted a committee to review the Indian past for the last 12,000 years, and one should feel very happy about such a thing. However, there was nobody in that committee from the northeast. There was no Christian, no Parsi, no Buddhist, no Jain, no Muslim. There was not even one woman, and there was absolutely nobody from the south. Now, obviously, if the committee is so narrowly constituted, myopically constituted, the results, the outcome of what that committee would do would not be, in my opinion, doing justice to the complex, multifaceted history of India, the many-layered society, the society with great diversity would become easy victims. Therefore, I thought that as a citizen, I should take initiative and bring together people, not as a committee, but as a collective. And so, I brought together scholars as a collective, a large number of scholars, more than 100 agreed to contribute. Because the time was short, 90 of them contributed to make this book, which is divided in 100 sections, covering not just 12,000 years, but also several thousand years prior to the Holocene. They got covered in this book. So, from that perspective, it was important to make such a book. That is one kind of significance of the book. But there is another, and this is only topical significance. As we move ahead in future, maybe 10 or 15, 20, 50 years from now, this particular angle of its significance will be forgotten. I hope it gets forgotten. But there is another, and that is throughout the development of history as a discipline in India over the last 200 years, from the beginning of the 19th century till now, our past has remained segmented into what is history, that is up to say the times of Tolkapiyam here in Tamil Nadu, or the first Sangam or elsewhere up to King Ashoka, or if you think of philosophies up to Gautam Buddha. That is first millennium before Christ. That is history. Nearly 1,000 years prior to that, that is from the decline of the Indus civilization, 1900 years prior to Christ, that's roughly 4,000 years before our time, till where history begins. That period was seen as proto-history, where the standards to be applied, standards of investigation, verification applied were different. The period prior to that, when humans arrived in this continent, when they formed society, when they went through many migrations, some clashes, some mix of Homo sapiens with Neanderthal or Homo erectus, or all of that was seen as prehistory, very vague, very distant. I thought it would be a good idea to bring the entire past together as a single matrix, a single grid or a single spectrum, within which complexities can be examined. I do not rule out the big changes that took place between prehistory and proto-history, between proto-history and history. Of course, even in the historical phase, many very significant changes have occurred. But this segmentation of the past in 3 different disciplines, are only archaeologists doing proto-history, only historians doing history, only the scientists dealing with agriculture or animals writing about the times prior to proto-history, that I thought was an artificial separation of disciplines. And so I decided to bring many disciplines together: genetics, archaeology, history, philosophy, linguistics and social science, and give a kind of a running account of the entire past since humans came here till today. So that is the other significance of this book, and I hope in future we will forget the first significance of the book, which is only the mere occasion for the book, but the second significance will be remembered, and in future other scholars, other thinkers will build upon this and produce more flawless, better accounts of the entire past.
Thank you, sir. Sir, in your introduction you also speak about this many-ended openness of histories, which allows for autocratic majoritarian regimes to replace the narratives of histories. So do you think such reimagined or replaced histories will actually stand the test of times?
The test of time is a very fickle-minded personage. It changes, but history is 2 things. One is history is the past as it was, and the second is an account of that past, a representation of the past, a narrative of that past as it is told. Now, the past as it was will remain what it was. Nobody later can change what has already happened, but its representation, its account, its narrative gets formulated through the prism of the political ideologies and the material pleasures of a given time. And in that sense, from time to time, the account of the same history undergoes change. So that is that many-ended openness. Now, in that open space of being able to present a new narrative, if some narratives decide to look at the essentials, the purities, as against the non-essentials and the impurities in a society, and if such a view decides to think of any synthesis in the past, as a matter of an offense, a suffering which deserves to be avenged in the present times, then such an account, historical account, can actually become a weapon or an instrument of torture for people in the present. What happens to the characters in the past is a different story. They were there, they are already gone. So, no amount of rewriting about them will affect their lives, but the lives of people living now can get affected. This kind of thing had happened in Europe once in 1920s and 30s, when in Italy and in Germany, the rulers of that time started looking at pure blood, citizens with pure Aryan blood, and we know what happened. So, that should not happen again. That was a shameful episode in our past, human past, and that should not happen again. That is the minimum desire that every decent citizen has in any country.
Sir, the introduction deals with the why part of this book. Can you take the viewers through how this happened? Because bringing 100 scholars together is no small feat.
No small feat. I entirely agree with you, even bringing 2 scholars together, because 2 scholars never agree. If there are 3, then that becomes an endless open debate without any conclusion. But I was not bringing 90 scholars to write on the same theme. See, when I began this whole initiative, I was looking at who are the leading scholars in every area of history, genetics, archaeology, anthropology, and so on. And then I invited Tony Joseph, who has done that wonderful book Early Indians, taking help from genetics, and Ravi Korishettar, who is a very gifted archaeologist. And 3 of us sat down and we divided the past into so many themes and segments, and for each of those we went to one scholar who was, in our opinion, the most suitable, the most eminent, the most learned in that area. And therefore, different scholars were writing on different themes, different areas. If somebody was writing about animal domestication in India, another was writing about medieval Kannada literature, and therefore disagreement among them was not a possibility. As far as the managerial part of it is concerned, it is just a matter of one's social skills, and if you are old, as I am, one has seen the world a lot, and therefore it is easier to speak to people and get them on board on any such venture. That is when I look at the whole thing from my individual egoistic perspective. But I think, having stated this, I think I am wrong in believing that it was my skill in bringing that brought them together. What brought them together was the need of the hour. There is a German word, Zeitgeist. The spirit of the time, the need of the hour made people chip in, join this initiative. So, rather than my bringing them together, it is our time which brought them together. I mean, supposing there is a group of people walking in a street and they see a fire, all of them will rush there. Nobody has to mobilize them. Out of my very limited, narrow, narcissistic pleasure, might say I brought them together, but I know that it is the spirit of the time that made them come together and work together. Otherwise, it would be very difficult. In happier times, in better times, this kind of coming together would be slightly more challenging.
And yeah, you did mention about the different topics covered in this book, from social movements to linguistics, anthropology, everything, and you still call it a work in progress.
Yes, because the past covered is so vast that not one book but perhaps 50 or 100 such books won't be enough to cover everything there. And so we had to compress things. When somebody spent an entire life, 5 or 6 decades working on a certain area, say Jain philosophy, Paul Dundas, or Sufism or Buddhism, or the Dravidic spirit, somebody has done work for 50 years, and I go to that person and say that she or he should write about all of that just in 1500 words is an atrocity of a kind. But those 1500 words or 2000 words are enough of an invitation to a reader to know more about it, and so that more about it is what needs to be done. It has already been done in separate segmented ways, but together the more of it needs to be done in the years to come, and I am sure somebody will do it if I cannot do it. Yes.
We hope you can, sir. You already mentioned how this is mapping the history of 12,000 years. So, how important it is to map the 12,000 years of history?
Actually, mapping itself is reasonably recent. The earliest maps we have available anywhere are the Greek maps, or there are maps not in graphic lines but in words, such as description of a continent. That is 3,000 years. So, mapping is a map as an external entity is recent, relatively recent, considering that the earth has been around for 400 crores of years. 4 billion years the earth is there, but the maps are only 4,000 years. See, India is the name that we use today in association with a map of a certain kind, but that name and the map that it has today, they did not tally all the time. The map kept changing. The name changed in its semantic contours. What it meant at one time did not mean the same in another century. So, India, as you say India as a country is 200-year-old, but that is the area where we are today. We are in Chennai today, and you know this as much as I do, that humans have inhabited this part of the world for the last 45,000 years. Out of Africa, what the genetics people will call the modern man, modern humans, they arrived through migration, long migrations, and they were here some 45,000 years ago. So, at that time did they know that they were in India? Obviously not. But if we think of this as India, then we must go to all time of its past available to us.
Sir, as a historian, as an activist, do you think there is a systematic erasure of Mughal history, sir? I read in the newly inaugurated parliament, there is no reference to Mughal history, but we have images of Chanakya and Akhand Bharat.
It is not a systematic erasure, it is a mindless erasure. Mindless erasure. It is the erasure is there, and that is because that kind of stream of thought, ideology if you like to call it, but it is a little less than an ideology in my opinion, that orientation believes that India was a very glorious country in the past and had made all achievements that one can imagine in the past, but a decline started after the Muslims came here. Now, that is not historically correct view of the past, because it is in those centuries that so many new things happen in India. For instance, new languages emerged, powerful languages. Oriya, Bangla, Marathi, Gujarati, Punjabi, Kashmiri, Nepali, they all emerged during those centuries and produce wonderful literature, wonderful philosophy. But this particular orientation likes to say that we are in a bad shape today because somebody came from outside, so they are dividing inside and outside. Somebody came from outside, and therefore they don't belong to our past, but they still continue to remain as outsiders. The fact of the matter is that in India, genetics shows that for all of us in India, whether Christian, Muslim, whatever, southern, northern, for all of us, our mothers come from the same stock, but our fathers in the past came from different stocks. That means there have been migrations into India, and it is impossible to say who is the original and who is the migrant. Every original Indian has always been a migrant Indian. Therefore, that orientation of looking at some last 500 years or 700 years as a black period, dark period, and therefore needing erasure is a very non-scientific view of history. Besides, I mean, even if one were to say that there were certain times of great decline in civilizational values in the past, when there is great violence or so on, people who do history have to accept that yes, this was a very good time in our history, some other moment was not such a good time in history. History writing is not like painting the past in glorious colors. History writing is telling about the past as it was, with its triumphs and with its tragedies.
So, my last two questions I wanted to ask you, because you are also a very important linguist who have been the pioneer of the People's Linguistic Survey of India. So one, there is a consistent repeated attempts by the central government to impose Hindi on states like Tamil Nadu. Even recently Amit Shah said that Hindi will eventually become the most important language. How do you see this?
The politics exercise, weaponize, use by the advocates of Hindutva rests on a single point of dividing majority against minority or minorities. Now, today in the census of India, we notice that Hindi speakers far outnumber the speakers of Telugu, Bangla. I mean, the Hindi is followed in terms of numerical strength by Bangla, Telugu, Marathi, Kannada, Tamil, Gujarati, and so on, Punjabi. So how to divide this? Take the majority. Who has the majority? Hindi speakers. Put Hindi against other languages, and espouse the cause of the majority by after dividing a society in terms of majority versus minority, and then it becomes easy to gain political power in electoral politics. When the model is worked in Manipur precisely in the same manner as it was worked out in Gujarat, as it is worked out in the area of languages. If there had been any awareness of the fact that Tamil is the longest surviving living language of the world, this kind of attitude would have been dismissed. Actually, we have reason to feel so proud of the Tamil heritage, Marathi heritage, and Kannada heritage. they are long, I mean they have been languages with a very long history and still surviving. They have gone through many changes, transitions, but they are continuous, and no European language is as continuous. The other continuous languages in the world are Arabic and Chinese Mandarin. So, the Arabic, Mandarin and Tamil need to be seen as the heritage of the world, global heritage, and not because Tamil is spoken by say 4 crores or 5 crores and Hindi is spoken by 40 crores. It does not mean that any political party should use the Hindi speakers to be kind of ranked against Tamil speakers. That should not happen, but that is what is happening. And so, my entire effort in the People's Linguistic Survey was to vouch for the languages with minimum speakers, to defend the cause of every dialect, and to speak of languages which are invisible, make them visible. So, diversity of language is important for continuing even our environmental diversity of species, and diversity allows the evolutionary process to go forward. But this majoritarian politics brings in only a unitary attitude to the nation rather than federal attitude. It brings in only one language or a few languages, Hindi and Sanskrit, forgetting that Pali, Prakrit, Dravidian languages were there. That will force us into going slowing down in our process of evolution as a nation, as a people. Diversity will take us forward. Attack in any manner on diversity will slow us down and make us come at a status quo, stand still. So, there is no point at all in marching forward to a standstill, no point in going ahead to the past.
So, you have already answered my second question about Tamil language, but I wanted to end this interview with one final question. So you've already worked on People's Linguistic Survey of India. Could I call this book People's History?
Yes.
In that, is there a message that you wanted to say by calling them as People's History, People's Survey?
In this book, we have given utmost importance to states, not to the center, and the message is very clear, and it is not a message that I have written inscribed in the book, but it is a message that the Constitution of India has given to us, and that message is, in very simple words and very accurately, India, that is Bharat, is a union of states. So, this book says that India is a union of states, and therefore, history of India will have to be histories of India. That is why the title uses the term in plural. Histories of India will always show the union, coming together of different states. The difference is there, but coming together is there. It is not only coming together, it is not only difference. Both at the same time need to be highlighted. That is what this book does. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time and your contributions.
It is such a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for your questions and your hospitality.
Thank you so much.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more news and updates.